Welcome back to the Fantasy HeatSeekers podcast. I'm your host, Rick Butts, here once again with the legendary Brad Menendez. Tonight, we are going to be talking about some of the trades that did and didn't happen, how they affect the players going forward. We are going to be talking about how to select running backs and running back by committee. Sometimes you don't know which one is startable. We're going to talk about what to look for in those running backs, and then we are going to talk about figuring out whether you are a pretender or a contender going into the last stretch of a playoff run. Brad, how has your week been so far?
Probably about as exciting as the NFL trade deadline. But
Oh, yeah. Well, we were messaging during the day, and I said, hopefully it's kind of like baseball where there were no trades, and then like 18 of them came in like the last 2 minutes before the clock ran up, and that did not happen. Like nothing happened. We heard a number of players were on the block, and were being talked about. All the trades happened well before the deadline came, and some of them I think are going to have a fantasy impact. Some other ones I'm not so sure. But why don't we just start off? What was your favorite trade that was made?
probably, I'm guessing it's probably the Leonard Williams to the Giants. From an IDP perspective, it gets him out of a really kind of crummy situation. He's never really been able to find a foothold in New York in the Jets organization. So hopefully, with the G-men, they put a little bit more stock in him, and the scheme that they run better suits his style of play. So they can move him inside or outside, and I think he can be effective. But we'll see what happens. How about you? What do you think?
Uh, Kenyon Drake getting out of Miami. And obviously, it's not the ideal situation going to Arizona, an offense that's just growing. But the nice thing is that no matter what, like it puts all end to any speculation that he could have stayed in Miami after this year. And that is the important part to really realize here because it was right before one of our broadcasts just a few weeks ago that there were rumors that they were trying to extend Kenyon Drake.
Ooh.
And, I was not happy when we started that broadcast because the news came out literally right before we went live. And I was just like, no, I want him gone. Um, Obviously, DJ's been injured.
Right.
And Chase Edmonds is injured now. DJ's a game time decision tomorrow night. Not an ideal matchup anyway. I don't know that Drake would get a lot of work on a short week and right after being traded, anyways. But just getting out of Miami. I mean, we saw the other night, man. Miami was up 14-0. Looked like everything was going good for their first win, and then they just went back to being the Dolphins. And Kenyon Drake getting out of there, I think it bumps his like literally any team that he would have went to, it would have bumped his value a little bit, just because we know like he's not going to be in Miami next year, and whoever he signs with, they're probably signing him to use him. You would at least assume, but
Yeah, you would have hoped. I mean, especially in Arizona, he's perfect insurance for an injury, but until, David Johnson, I think, is 27 right now. So until they kind of get him out of the way, his ceiling's still kind of stunted, but, he's going to get plenty of playing time because DJ gets hurt all the time.
well, and it's like I said, he's a half year in Arizona. We don't even know where he'll be next year. He's an unrestricted free agent after this season, so he'll have his choice of teams that actually want him. And I'm sure a hot topic in those negotiations will be, how do you plan to use me? Because I haven't been used yet. And this is a running back that was running back 14 overall last year, getting less than 11 touches per game. He's got upside. We know where he can go. The hot topic has been, what is he worth in picks? I'm not paying it now, but I just was commenting on a post. Like I don't think that it's like crazy if somebody paid a late first for him. we know what he's capable of doing if he gets used. So there's upside there. You don't know what any pick that you're getting in the late first round, you don't know what they're capable of doing. And if you think, we know Edmonds is out for a stretch, and if you are, the person that thinks DJ is going to be out or at least limited for a while, outside of this week in the 49ers, if he gets utilized in that offense, we've seen what Chase Edmonds can do, and I think Kenyon Drake's a better talent than him. So I think there is some room for him to help a contending team, and I don't think that, none of the guys that we're going to be drafting in the late first round are guaranteed to have the upside that Kenyon Drake has, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, at least currently, I think that. I just really starting to work through the Devy stuff, but Kenyon Drake's a very talented dude, and I hope the best for him, because I'd hate to see him go his entire career and never really get the kind of play that he should. I mean, the dude's so talented, and oftentimes you don't hear that. I mean, normally Alabama running backs get their fair share and plenty of time to ruin their careers, but this guy just hasn't gotten the love that he deserved. So.
And he's been he was running back 14 on a terrible Miami team last year. So I think that with a better offense, there's just a lot of upside there. And that's the type of upside that I'm willing to take a gamble on. It's a little bit different than even, a Duke Johnson that I've liked in the past. I think obviously he would be better with more work, but Kenyon Drake, I think, like, in the same realm as Aaron Jones. Maybe not as good as Aaron Jones, and it's going to be hard to get into an offense as good as what Aaron Jones is in. But if he was used in that same type of way, now that Aaron Jones is being used in the passing game, and that's where Kenyon Drake has done most of his damage, I think that he could be a running back one if he got that opportunity. So I look forward to seeing where he ends up next year. I'm just glad knowing that there is no extension coming from Miami. That makes me happy in itself. Okay, so
Do you want to hit on? There's one big piece of news other than trades.
Well, first I
Do you
want to
talk
ask
Yeah,
what player that was rumored to be potentially moving that didn't get moved that you wish would have.
Robbie Anderson. I think he had the best potential to move somewhere, be a very impactful player immediately. The dude just uber talented, and you've seen what he can do. Even with a Sam Darnold who's been getting just chased and running for his life. So I would love to see him go somewhere. Yeah. I felt so bad for that dude. I'm like, I bet every quarterback you mic him up says something similar throughout their career. Like, that poor guy, he's never gonna live that thing down. Like,
that's bad.
I hope
though.
you got thick skin.
That's bad though.
What about you?
Same team, Le'Veon Bell.
Oh yeah.
Adam Gase does his best to just ruin running backs, and this dude got 13 touches last week. Le'Veon Bell got 13 touches. That is ridiculous.
He's averaging at least 20. I mean, and more like 20 to 25 a game. I mean, that dude's just so talented. He's like your best offensive weapon.
He's definitely the best offensive weapon they've got, which isn't saying much because he's devalued just because that offense has been so bad. Now, I will say that obviously we had a lot of Luke Falk earlier in the season when Sam Darnold was out. That does not help any. But, hopefully this stretch that they've got coming up that is much easier. It's a pretty easy schedule going forward. Hopefully that helps Le'Veon Bell get on track, especially for teams that have him that are in playoff pushes. But yeah, he would have, if he would have went to Kansas City, I knew a lot of people were, rumoring that.
That'd have been huge.
That would have been huge. Even a team like Buffalo that I don't like a lot, that a lot of people were speculating was in the they were looking for a running back and a receiver apparently. With Josh Allen and the way he makes stuff, I thought Le'Veon Bell to Baltimore would have been great in free agency last year just because of the space that Lamar Jackson creates. Josh Allen does the same thing, so that would have been fun. So that's a little bit of a bummer. that he didn't get moved. But yeah, I think those two were the two biggest ones for me. Robbie Anderson to the Saints would have been amazing. I know they were in the market for a wide receiver on the outside. Like, Ted Ginn, just watching him against the Bears, like he should have had a huge day against the Bears, but he dropped like two. One was a touchdown and one was another long bomb, and Robbie Anderson in that spot instead. Oh man, with Drew Brees back, that would have been gross.
I would have been, yeah. I would have liked to see a running back go to Detroit. I mean, obviously, I don't think Detroit's a playoff team, and I'm glad they really didn't move anybody. But they need a running back. Like the offense is capable, and now they're playing with just trash. They got Trey Carson. They released Paul Perkins. They've got Ty Johnson. It's like, come on, guys. If you really think you're a playoff contender, you needed to get a running back.
That's where I really thought that Kenyon Drake was going to go after the carry-on injury. And I don't think, I think that Detroit's the type of team that could make a run. They could, get a couple, a 3-game win streak or something and be right back in the race.
Sure.
So, yeah, I thought they were going to do something, and they didn't. They didn't trade Slay, which is good. I think Slay's a guy that you got to keep around. He's so good. One of the few shutdown corners.
They've upset him though, and the concern for me is, have you upset him enough that after the season he's not going to resign with you? That's my only concern. Like if you think you can resign him, great, keep him. If you don't think you're going to resign him or be able to, you should have traded him. Like that's just, you either get no value or you get a long-term contract. I mean, and I don't care which. I mean, I don't know what Detroit thinks they are, but. I would have liked to see if this defense can fix itself and start playing like it should, that they have that ability, but who knows what Detroit team shows up every week.
Right. I feel the same way about my Bears. So what?
They need a quarterback.
Yeah. Don't even get me started there. What was that news you were speaking of?
So Darius Geis is returning from injury at the same time as Trent Williams ending his holdout. So that is beneficial for Darius Geis, I think. I hope.
Well, Trent Williams failed his physical because he had a growth on his head. And his helmet was uncomfortable. And I guess they found this growth. And when it comes to the Washington Redskins medical team, who knows how that'll turn out.
Yeah. So there's potential there. I mean, obviously, Geis coming back could be helpful for the Geis owners, unless you sold him after that last injury, which I was a guy who started selling him off. It's like, forget this, I'm out.
Yeah, you probably sold too early. Right now would have been a better time.
Yeah.
Some other news that came up in the last week was Josh Gordon was put on short-term IR. And the Patriots are going to have to release him once he is healthy. Now, we talked about some of those teams. Philly was in the market for a wide receiver. Green Bay, the Saints. One of these.
Josh Gordon, New Orleans would be disgusting too. Like
Josh Gordon, any of them would be.
Yeah, but New Orleans is a clear path to. This dude would get an insane amount of targets. Like Green Bay's got a bunch of receivers, so I could see where it could muddy it up a little bit. He's still their best receiver.
Green Bay's got one receiver who's finally coming back. But, there's a lot of people talking about how Josh Gordon wasn't any good this year. The stat line isn't good. But when you look at the metrics,
he's still good.
Defenses weren't giving him space. They were checking him off the line because Tom Brady throws it so fast and so short that as long as you just stunt Josh Gordon a little bit, he's not going to beat you in that offense because they just don't throw deep. Tom Brady's got a 7.21 average depth per throw, and that's shorter than, it's like 28th in the league or something. But yeah, so seeing him go somewhere where they do throw deep would be awesome. And any of those quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, Drew Brees, any of those guys throwing to him, like I wouldn't even hate Josh Allen throwing to him. Josh Allen
No.
likes to take deep throws, so even Buffalo's a place to look. So hopefully this injury doesn't last very long. There has been zero talk about this dude failing a drug test or anything like that. So
Right.
um, Bill Belichick just knows that he's not a benefit to their offense because he's a deep threat, and they like this short passing game, whether it's to James White or Edelman. Dorsett's the only guy on the team with an A dot above 10.
Right. Very true. Yeah, it's tough. I hope Josh Gordon's healthy quickly and gets to another team. Because I'm still holding. I mean, I've had a few guys ask me about him, but I wouldn't move him for what people are offering right now at all.
Oh no, it's just not worth it. Um, Especially knowing that those three teams are probably going to be one of the three teams that get him. Because if you want to win, then you go to one of them teams because they've all got a shot to win. And Philly's, if that's the deciding factor, Philly's probably out. And it probably comes down to Green Bay and the Saints if they're interested in him. Obviously, there's still a history with Josh Gordon. So who knows who will be interested, but it would be awesome to see him go to one of those spots. And New Orleans has been looking for that wide receiver too. I mean, since they signed Dez Bryant last year, and
Hmm.
Cam Meredith, and they have had zero luck getting that number two spot filled up. So that would be great. I would love to see it.
Yeah, that'd be
I
huge.
got some in my eye, man. I'm not crying over Josh Gordon. I promise.
I might if he keeps jerking us around.
if he if he ends up in Miami.
Oh
Oh god.
no,
Actually, you know what?
no.
Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing to him probably wouldn't be the worst thing because they'll take some deep, deep, deep shots. So,
We'll chuck
um,
it.
all right. Do we have anything else? Are there any other trades that you want to talk about before we get into the meat of this podcast?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, you already seen the Emmanuel Sanders trade. Do what it was supposed to do. I mean, he got targeted a bunch, and
Found the end zone
uh,
real early in his 49ers
oh yeah,
career.
yeah. So I mean, that was a good one.
Pretty sure Sanu had 5 or 6 targets in his first game there. So he's going to
Yep.
fit in nicely. They both only had that short week to get involved with the team. So going forward, they're going to be heavily involved in those offenses.
Yeah, I think they both were good trades and good moves for fantasy and for NFL. So,
Patriots
what about
probably
you?
overpaid a little bit with that second
Well,
round pick.
well, but they can. I mean, with their team, it's like half the time they trade away their picks, they move them around. I mean, it's like whatever. I don't blame them.
All right. So I got to remember this guy's name. I don't want to be a jerk, but Brady Giles in our Facebook group said that he was having issues with some of the running back by committees. So you're looking at the 49ers with Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida and Free Wilson. It seems like they've always got 3 guys active, and you never know who's going to do what on any given night. You've got Philly with Miles Sanders and Jordan Howard. You've got Buffalo with Frank Gore and Devin Singletary when he's been healthy. Uh, you know, Going into tomorrow night's game, we've got the Cardinals also who have said that it's going to be a running back by committee. David Johnson is uh, a game time decision, but they're not going to just give one guy all the touches tomorrow night. So, how do we determine who is startable and who's not? I think there are a lot of deceiving stats, and I'm going to talk about one situation here in just a minute. And then, you know, a lot of times, especially for older running backs that are in those committees, name value can be very, very deceiving. So let me ask you first, like, when you're looking at any of those guys in any of those situations, what is the first thing that you look for?
For me, it tends to be how often they're on the field. So I look at like snap counts. Um, that isn't the Oftentimes it isn't the best factor, but at least if they're on the field, there's a chance they're getting the ball. In a case like Tampa Bay, I'd just stay away from both because they're 50-50 split, and you never know which one's really going to be the game plan. But like if you think about something like Arizona, David Johnson's getting like 62% of the snaps, so he's on the field for, I think he's had like 341 snaps this year so far. So that tends to be the first thing I look at. It doesn't always be my deciding factor, but I tend to start there and kind of work through that process. What about you?
Absolute first thing that I look at is if they are big play reliant or not, right? So you have some guys, and I'm gonna talk about Matt Breida, and everybody remembers that big game earlier this year. He had that 82-yard run for a touchdown, and everybody was like super stoked about Matt Breida. Now Matt Breida is good, but Tevin Coleman comes back, and everybody still thinks that Matt Breida is going to be fantasy relevant. And there was a specific question on our Facebook group where it was either Matt Breida or Kenyon Drake, and everybody picked Matt Breida, and I picked Kenyon Drake for the simple fact that Balaj and Walton at the time weren't getting a big enough share, and Kenyon Drake gets his work in the passing game, and we know that Tevin Coleman is the goal line guy, and Matt Breida is not, right? So if Matt Breida is not busting off 82-yarders, his fantasy value goes down big time. That night, he had 114 yards on 20-some carries, and 82 of them came on one, or whatever that stat line was. I don't remember exactly. But, so I look at that because obviously when you're in a split and you don't know what the usage is going to be, the less touches that somebody gets, or the potential for less touches, then the less opportunity for that big play. And if they rely on that big play so much and they're not the touchdown guy, I mean, Jeffrey Wilson was the touchdown guy. We knew Matt Breida wasn't the goal line guy when Tevin Coleman came back. We knew that was Tevin Coleman's job because Matt Breida didn't even have it when he was out. So you got to look at all those things, I think. But if they're big play reliant and that's how they've made most of their fantasy production, then I'm leery on playing them over somebody that gets more touches than them, even if they don't have that same fantasy point per touch outcome that the big play guy does.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I would recommend against doing, I've heard some guys that have messaged me talk about, so if you're using a site, don't take what they think their projected fantasy output is. I don't even regard that. A lot of the sites, like if you look at like MFL, will put what they think that projected amount of fantasy points that week is. Disregard it. I look at the stats, look at the facts, see what's out there, make your own decision on that. Don't take somebody else's guess on that. Just from personal experience.
Yeah, most of the actual fantasy platforms, their projection systems are just horrendous. If you really want projection stuff, then I would rely more on a daily fantasy projection style because they put a lot of work into that matchup and touches and usage and everything like that. Way more than Yahoo or ESPN or any of those guys do. They basically just go off a point per touch and how many touches they think they're going to get versus whatever defense they're facing, and just throw out spitball some idea out there. But none of them are perfect, and you can't just rely on projections, right, one way or the other. The other thing that I really look for is which one of them catches the ball. If you're in PPR, then obviously one guy can get less touches, but if he's catching the ball and the other guy's just running the ball, then you have more upside with those receptions and that point per reception than you do from, like let's just say in theory that Derrick Henry and Deion Lewis were actually a good running back combo. And Deion Lewis was catching the ball out of the backfield. There's a good chance that Deion Lewis could have had more fantasy value because of those receptions. Now that didn't work out. Looking at Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard last year, Tariq Cohen was getting all his work, 7 receptions a game or whatever he was getting out of the backfield, made him way more valuable, even though Jordan Howard out-touched him. So receptions, another key in determining, whether or not I'm going to start a running back and a running back by committee.
Right. And unfortunately, you can also fall into the trap of, and it's not really a trap. I mean, they're both fantasy relevant, but like a team like Denver, both players are getting a fair amount of receptions. I think they both are right around like 20 or 25 receptions. Plus, they're each around 100 carries. It's like, okay, so, some offenses can support. I mean, obviously, Denver's offense is bad, so they're both getting it because of the way the offense is. But some offenses can support 2 running backs in a week, but not very often. So you have to be careful on that.
To look at it a different way, if we go over to New England, and this has been something people have been trying to guess for years, who isn't going to get the fantasy points tonight. And one of the things that I always do when I'm looking at the New England running backs is I try to figure out what is the game script going to work out to be. If New England's playing Miami, then I'm probably less apt to play James White because I figure they're going to be playing with a lead, and that leans more towards Sony Michel with touchdown upside. So that's another thing that you got to look at is matchup. Who's going to score the touchdowns? Are they going to be trailing? Because then that leans way towards the receiving running back. If they're going to be playing from way ahead, it leans way towards the guy that's the goal line guy and the pounded out running back. So you really got to look at that game and say, how do I think this game's going to play out? Is this team going to be leading? Is it going to be a close game, or are they going to be behind? And then work yourself there. Doug's asking us a question. He said he's got to go to bed. Normally we wait till after we get done with the meet to answer these, but Doug's been a RotoHeat guy for over a year, almost 2 years. So
Doug,
I want to make sure to get this question in. He says, is New England's defense great? I think they have played nobody with a winning record minus Buffalo. I think that is to be determined, but I don't care that they haven't played like the best offenses. I don't think you shut teams out like they've done. I don't think you dominate teams in the NFL like they've done if your defense isn't great. And I hate admitting that because it's the Patriots, but NFL teams just don't dominate like that. Like it doesn't happen very often.
No.
And I think they've got to be at least pretty damn good to do what they've done so far. Same can be said. I mean, San Francisco 49ers really haven't, they played the Rams, but other than that, I mean, it's been a little lackluster on who they've played. But when you dominate like that, in the NFL, they're doing what Auburn does to small colleges. It's just crazy. I mean, in Alabama and Clemson and those teams, like, there's a way bigger discrepancy in talent there than there is in the pros, and they're making teams look soft and bad.
Well, and when you look at the rest of their schedule, it's not like there's a team on their schedule that's really going to cause anybody to go, oh, well, this defense really isn't good. I mean, they're facing good teams. They've got the Texans and the Chiefs coming up, and the Ravens are decent. But the way that New England's defense runs, the looks that they give these young quarterbacks, it makes them a better defense because Belichick's smarter than all these other guys. Like, it's just plain and simple. I mean, the dude's just very intelligent. So, like we talked about with the seeing ghosts thing, Belichick knows how to cover up his schemes and kind of trick the quarterback into not seeing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there. I mean, he's a good defensive-minded guy. He's a good offensive-minded guy too. I mean, their defense is good. I mean, it just is what it is. So if you're in a league, in a redraft or something that does defenses, I mean, them and the 49ers are the two defenses that are must start every week. I don't question it. I mean, it just is what it is. They're good.
Yep, I do not disagree. I think I seen a post the other day on Twitter. There's like 8 or 9 players or something that have scored more points than New England's defense in fantasy.
Yeah, they are pretty solid right now.
I
I'm
play
sure that'll change a
zero
little.
defense leagues, so I can't vouch for that, but I seen it on Twitter, and it may have been 10 or 11 guys, but I mean, they were up there in like the top 12 of fantasy scores so far this year, so it's ridiculous for sure. Any more running back by committee stuff? Is there anything else that you want to say in regards to how you're picking out those guys?
No, I don't really think there's anything major. I would say to don't tinker. Oftentimes I'll see guys in chats, or see guys message that they're kind of going back and forth. Like, be careful to not overthink it. There's plenty of times where I've taken a guy out thinking, oh well, the matchup just isn't great, and he goes off. Like, don't hesitate. You set your lineup. If you've done your research and you know what's going on, just set it and go. What about you?
Well, I've always been a tinker guy. I tinker way too much, I ain't gonna lie. But just approving a new member for our Facebook group. So make sure you get on over to the Facebook group so you can join this conversation with Eric White, who just joined. The matchup thing is difficult because there are certain guys that you're going to not play in a bad matchup, and then there's other guys where you are going to play no matter what. McCaffrey, Cook, those guys you cannot sit even if they're in a bad matchup. They get so many touches, and touches lead to one, wearing down the defense, and two, fantasy points. And then, like this week, you've got David Montgomery. A lot of people are going to want to throw him in their lineups because he had a big week last week. But Philly stops the run, and I don't care who you are. Like, that's a tough matchup. Like, I don't feel great about playing any running back versus them, but the few guys I will. But like David Montgomery this week shouldn't, unless you don't have an option, should not be in your lineup. And if he goes off, then it sucks. It's bad luck. But Philly just doesn't give up points to the running back.
I'd say that's an anomaly,
Right.
not the norm.
And then that's where you got to remember process over results. Because, yeah, maybe this time he goes off because none of those guys are going to not have a – I don't care who we're talking about. Like Peyton Barber is going to throw up a good game every now and then, even though he's not a good running back. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. That doesn't mean that you were a bad fantasy player because you didn't put him in your lineup. Or if you put in, or if you play him this week and he goes off, it doesn't mean that you're a good fantasy player. We all get lucky sometimes. We all get unlucky sometimes. But, you really got to look at process over results, but go with your gut. If you really think that there's something there, then play them. But don't be upset when when they don't turn out the way that you wanted them to be.
Absolutely.
All right, so Brady, I really hope that helps you out in picking those guys and when to start them and when not to. Look at the defenses they're playing against. There's some defenses give up a lot of yards. Like right now, Chicago's not giving up a lot of rushing yards. They're giving up a lot of receptions to the running back and then the touchdowns. So, people see them giving up a bunch of points, but you're still not starting Jordan Howard if you don't have to, because he's not going to catch the ball a bunch. Miles Sanders, on the other hand, you might be starting because he can catch the ball. Um, so you got to look at that type of stuff too. What really hurts that defense? If you're one of them guys that's just on Yahoo and you see that the defense is green, that they're playing against, why is it green? Is that team, and it can go to wide receivers too. Does that team shut down the wide receiver one but give up a bunch of points to the wide receiver two or the slot receiver? Do they give up not very many rushing yards, but a lot of receiving yards to the running back? There's a lot of factors that go into that. So don't just look at, their one aspect. Are we live everywhere? Because it seems really quiet. I guess the World Series Game 7 is going on, but
Your story. Yeah, we're good.
Okay, Brad, what do we got next? Do you know?
I don't remember now. I remember we were talking running backs.
We
so
are
you're gonna have
going
to tell
to
me what
talk
we're talking
about how to
next.
figure out if you are a pretender or a contender.
Oh, contender.
So, let's just say,
Debatable.
right now you're in a league. You're in fourth place. 6 teams make the playoffs, but you've got 4 teams 1 game behind you. What is the first thing you look at to figure out if you're in a spot to make a run, or if you may be just a bit overvaluing your team because you're in fourth place?
This is such a hard. I have the hardest time with deciding if I'm a contender or not. Oftentimes, I kind of look at the makeup of my team, and so, for instance, I'm in a 16-team league where I'm 6-2, 7-1, something like that. But my team is very top heavy. So I've got Lamar Jackson. It's a single QB. I got Lamar Jackson. My running backs were Austin Eckler and Royce Freeman are my big producers. Austin Eckler obviously has had a really solid year, but I think he comes back down to earth a little bit more, and I don't think he keeps up that pace. At receiver, I've got Kenny Golladay, Cortland Sutton, I can't think of my number 3 right now, but Mike Williams, guys that are young and talented, but I don't have a lot of depth behind. At tight end, I've got Mark Andrews, who is solid. So I look at the overall team and I go, okay, I may be in first place in my division. I've got no depth, so if I get an injury, I'm toast. So in that case, I'm a pretender. What can I do to kind of get ready for that next season? Is there a little bit of something I can do there? So I look at my roster makeup and I kind of go, all right, what's good and what's bad about it? And I try to be as honest with it as possible. What about
First,
you?
I want to say, Ben, we appreciate you. He says he's watching us and World Series Game 7 all at the same time. We appreciate you being here.
The man.
Well, first off, what I look at is points scored, because obviously standings can be very deceiving in fantasy, right? I heard one guy earlier this week said, man, I'm 4th in scoring in my league, but I'm in like 11th place, because it just happens that every week I play one of the highest scoring teams and just can't get any wins under my belt. So there's a spot where you could say, okay, well, I'm in 11th, but my team's a lot better than these guys, so maybe I don't have to completely sell off a lot of pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I have one league where I've scored like 150 less points than teams that are behind me, but I'm ahead of them in the schedule because I've had a fortunate schedule where I've been ahead of people. But you can't just stop there, right? We're going into week 9. There's still, 4 weeks of buys left. When you look at that, okay, I'm 150 points behind, but if I look at my roster and I've had most of my players on bye already, then my points are going to be lower just because I've been missing guys like every week. And then if I look at the rosters ahead of me or behind me, and most of them have, guys coming up in week 10, 11, and 12, they're going to come back down to earth, and that's going to level out a little bit. Also, do I have Kareem Hunt and AJ Green coming back in week 10 that I haven't had all year? Do I have, um, did I have, was I starting Mason Rudolph because Drew Brees was out for 5 weeks? That happened to me in one league. um, those types of things you really got to look at. Who does your opponent? You really got to go in and look at your opponents. You got to look at their roster. What do they have coming up? Okay, they've got a lot of guys on bye in week 12, so they're probably not going to win that week. So there's one win that I can make up on them because my bye weeks are balanced out, and I should be able to win that week. Or I've got guys coming back from injury, and he's got guys that just got injured. You really got to look at all of that stuff to really figure out where you're at. Now, if you're just a team that's just been dominating and scoring, well, I'm going to have everybody come playoffs, then there's no question about it. But if you're looking and the points don't add up to where you're at in the standings, you got to dig a little bit deeper, and you got to really look into your opponents and see what are their weak spots, where are they strong, and if we get to the playoffs with the current rosters that we have and everybody's healthy, how do I think that makes how do I think that how that works out at that point?
It's good.
That's good. You don't have anything else to say? Just that's good. I have a
No, I'm just listening. I was just kind of processing as you're saying it, and it's helpful. I mean, the biggest thing is just continue to be honest about where your team's at. I know this is dynasty, but oftentimes I see owners act like it's redraft come week 7, 8, 9 if they think that they can make a bunch of moves and get themselves in position and sell off the future. Like, you have to balance. We've talked about really only looking like 2 to 3 years down the road. We talked about that in the offseason some. I think it's big to think of where your team's at short term and in the the 2 to 3 year window. But don't treat this like a redraft. You're not going to make enough moves to make yourself successful and win it all. And not cause yourself some issues in the in the immediate future. So ultimately being honest about your team will go a long way.
That is the number one rule at all times in fantasy, is be honest about your roster. Now, all of us, we have different, convictions. We like different guys. Some of us, we're going to be really high on some guys and really low on others. And that's different than the honesty factor. But when you really look at your roster compared to your opponents, where are you at?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. And I'm looking on here. It looks like we don't really have a lot by way of questions. It might be a quiet
And
night
I
tonight.
kind of figured it would be with the World Series going on with Game 7, not just the World Series, but Game 7, Game
Big
7
deal.
in any sport is amazing. I do have, like, in 96 version 2, apparently a trade went through where one team got 2 players and a pick and the other team got nothing. So it looks like I'm going to have to fix some stuff on there. For those of you listening, I run 3 96 team leagues, 48 team league, and then like 4 12 team leagues. So I've always got some commish duties going on. I do also want to say that our Facebook group isn't for bashing people out there that are being a commish. Ben, we'll get to your question in just 1 minute. We had a big thing come up in the Facebook group the other day where somebody, was trying to bash a commissioner of another league because he didn't like the ruling on something, was calling the guy a cheater. I just want everybody to know, like, those of us that commish, and especially commish a lot of leagues or with a lot of players, stuff gets missed. Mistakes happen. That doesn't mean that they're cheating. Okay, there's stuff that just shouldn't happen for league integrity, and I do agree that rules need to be set and followed, but sometimes rules are missed when coming up with bylaws. Like, if we literally put everything in the bylaws, like, it would be, they could teach it a course in law school about it. There's so many unwritten rules in fantasy. um, but I don't want RotoHeat to, uh, if you have proof like that somebody is stealing from, that's different. But if it's just because you don't agree with something, RotoHeat's not the spot to drop and try to slander somebody's name without hard proof that they are cheaters or thieves. So I just want to say that. I know how much work goes into it. I put a lot of work into it every year. I'm so like if you ask my friends, like when it gets to season time, like I'm relieved because that's the easy part. The whole off season in these dynasty leagues are taxing, running the drafts and then getting everything ready up to the season. Um, Give these guys a break, man. I know there's a lot of good guys out there that are running leagues. Uh, they're doing it for fun. They don't get paid. They put a lot of time in, and they deserve a little leeway when mistakes happen because they're going to happen. We're all just human. So I just wanted to say that. Um, Ben Fisher says, scary Terry McLaurin or Cortland Sutton long term. Cortland
Portland
Sutton
Sutton.
easy for me. Cortland Sutton easy.
Yep. He's a monster.
I seen somebody trade Tyreek Hill for Terry McLaurin and a first yesterday. Yes.
Come again?
Yes.
No way.
Yes. And
No
it
way.
disgusted
No
me.
way.
Terry McLaurin, I'm not saying he won't be good, but like no.
Not Tyreek Hill
And
good.
a first isn't enough to get that deal done. Cortland Sutton has wide receiver 1 upside, and I don't know that McLaurin will ever sustain that for a year. Uh, but that doesn't mean that he can't be a back end wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3 consistently. There's a big difference and values there, I think. Cali Dude, welcome back to the stream. He shows up every week for us a little bit later because he's out there on the West Coast. But he says, does Drake's stock go up now that he's in Arizona? We did talk about this a little bit earlier in the show, but why don't we hit that again for Cali Dude?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere outside of Miami, his stock goes up just because he left Miami.
That's
That's just the
basically
way
what
it
we
is.
said. If you're talking redraft, it may hurt him. Because if David Johnson's healthy, I don't know how much work he'll get. But if he plays that Edmonds role that Edmonds was getting into even before DJ was hurt and missed time, then he can still have some value. And there's more touchdown upside in Arizona than there is in Miami. For Dynasty, the fact that we know he won't be with Miami automatically raises his value for me.
Yep, huge. Huge.
Any more questions out there? If you got a question, drop it in there. I'll tell you what, the most we're going to do is 7 more minutes. So if you want to get that in, you better do it now. And that'll be the first time that we've ever got this podcast done in under an hour. So we just need Game 7 of the World Series to be on every Wednesday night at 9:30.
But see, listening to us is like Game 7 of the World Series. It's high energy. It's edge of your seat. We just don't have any good flashes going on.
Dude, I guess NASCAR welcomed those girls to NASCAR races.
I bet they did.
No problem, Cali, dude.
Ricky Bobby's all about that.
I do want to say that I need to apologize because Sunday morning I got up, I did not feel well, and I just decided not to go live. So if you were waiting for Sunday morning, it didn't happen, and I apologize. But I got ran into the ground last week, and it was the last thing that I wanted to do, and I just didn't feel well. So I didn't do it. And then I watched my Bears lose because their quarterback blows. Anything else, Brad, that you wanna say? Oh, I do have some other stuff to say, but Ben Fisher wants to know who are some good guys to buy low right now. And let's look at Ben. Why don't you tell me? Are you looking redraft or dynasty or a little bit of both? Why don't you tell us that, Brad? And then we'll get to that. But I want to say, like, we've had some great articles come out this week. I know, Brad, you did a buy low, sell high IDP article.
IDP, yeah, I did. Well, I did a buy. I did the buys.
Okay,
I'm
so we
working
did
on the
the
sells
IDP
now. So yeah,
buys.
I'm working on IDP.
We
Yep.
know Rob Soley dropped that start sit article. Great
Delicious.
article. We had a buy sell article from Taylor that came out. So make sure you're over on rotoheat.com. There's some great stuff over there. Ben, you're asking about buy lows. You can check out those articles, but we will, if you tell us redraft or dynasty, we'll give you some of our personal ones too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're working hard at trying to schedule and get a lot of good content up throughout the week. And Rob and Taylor and a lot of the guys are doing a good job. Uh, I'm excited for the site, so you guys check that out. Make sure you stay up to date on that. Make sure you can always subscribe to the RSS feed so you can get updated every time we pump an article out. You know,
Yeah,
there's a lot of good
there's
stuff
a
there.
little thing at the bottom right corner for one signal. Maybe it's bottom left. I don't know my left from right.
Yeah, one signal. That's what
Hit
it is.
that,
Yep.
and it'll notify you every time that we pump out an article. Ben says redraft. So my first guy for redraft is LeVeon Bell because of that schedule that he's got coming up. It's really, really soft. I know the Jets aren't good, but they should actually be able to move the ball a little bit. And if Sam Darnold plays even half decent, um, that makes him a buy for me.
Yeah. Another running back for me would be Kareem Hunt. I know that Chubb is rock solid, but if you think that he's going to get play in that offense and he's going to jump in and get something going, now is the time to get him. I've gotten him in a few places for nothing. You know, I basically picked him up off the waiver wire just to stash him.
I love that one because not only at the beginning of the year, we thought that Cleveland was going to be in the thick of it. Now they're not. So who do you wear out? Do you wear out a Kareem Hunt that you only have locked up for the rest of this season? Or do you wear out the guy that you're using in the future in Nick Chubb? I would literally, if I was Cleveland, I would look at Nick Chubb and I'd be like, we're going to limit your touches and try to keep you healthy and make sure that you are healthy because he did have that big injury in college. We're going to give Kareem Hunt some.
Mm-hmm.
AJ Green hasn't played all year. He's coming back in week 10. So some people might be looking to get out from under him if they get help, especially if they have an important bye week this week, and you can help them in their bye week, but it helps you more when AJ Green comes back. The problem there is that one Ryan Finley is now the starting quarterback for the Cleveland or for the Cincinnati Bengals.
Womp womp. Yeah, that's bad. That's bad news. It'll be tough. I mean, but AJ Green, I think, well, we've seen him with Andy Dalton. I mean, you know, Andy Dalton's not terrible, but he's not amazing. So AJ Green could still be valuable. Receiver wise, yeah, that's a hard one to think of. You know, I guess if you're looking for somebody who, you know, who maybe got traded recently, a guy like Zay Jones in Oakland, you know, they're starting to work him into the offense a little bit more. Maybe there's some value there to be had, but it's a stretch. But I know he's cheap right now.
That's a free
yeah.
Ben says it's OBJ a buy low.
I don't know, man. For redraft, things aren't looking good. I mean, if he's on your team, you have to start him every week, but who knows what you're going to get every week out of him. I think I'd look elsewhere.
People want to get out from under him so bad. He's got one of the biggest target shares in the league. Those are going to start converting. They're not going to be this bad. I would hope not in the second half as they were in the first half. This is like the perfect buy low because not only can he get marginally better, But if that offense actually gets back to where they were in the second half last year, then this is a guy that can win you leagues. Like, he'd be a guy, if I was in redraft, I would be going to every owner in every league that I'm in trying to get. But I am definitely willing to gamble a little bit more than Brad is. I've got gambling in my blood, so.
Yeah, me not so much.
Any other players that, I think Dallas Goedert could be a buy low tight end. We already see him over the last couple weeks. Last 3 weeks, he's been a tight end one. He's scored 2 weeks in a row, and he's had more yards in each of the last 2 games than Zach Ertz. I think Zach Ertz could also be on that buy low list because a lot of people are really worried right now. But I do expect Zach Ertz to be the leading tight end for the Eagles the rest of the season. So I think either of those guys could be a buy low. If you're playing DFS, I think this is a perfect week to play Zach Ertz if you can get him into your lineups. Any tight ends on your radar?
I would probably, I don't know that you're buying him low at this point, but Gerald Everett, he's a guy that I've seen get traded for fairly cheap in redraft, and he continues to get a pretty good amount of targets. With the Brandon Cooks injury, he should still see a pretty good amount of targets. I don't know how cheap he's going to be for you. I mean, I saw him get traded maybe a week ago before last weekend's game for nothing, basically.
Mike Gesicki. If you watched that game the other night, Ryan Fitzpatrick actually liked him some Mike Gesicki. And if he gets worked in more, he's going to be like really super cheap. And we know how fickle that back end of the top 12 receivers are. So somebody to look at for sure.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's certainly a decent option. I guess another one. I'm not going to say. I guess I don't really know what to make of it, but a guy like Kyle Rudolph, if you need a tight end, he's been getting more targets here recently. I don't know why he isn't getting more targets, but we've seen a little bump. He's had 3, 6, and 3 over the last 3 weeks, where he was like averaging 1 target a week before that. So, for what it's worth,
nobody else like really comes in off the top of my head as a buy low. Preston Williams, I like dynasty wise. For long term, I mean, this dude's 6'5" and can do multiple things. But Jake had a cake. Hello, welcome to the stream. If you're out there on Twitch or YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe buttons and notification bell so you get notified every time we go live.
Yeah, Auden Tate's another nice one, but he's more of a dynasty as well. So he's been pretty good.
That just Miami doesn't have enough touchdown upside for me to be buying their assets for redraft. For dynasty, though, I think it's great because they can't be this bad forever, right? They at least got to be competent at some point, even if they're not a playoff team. They can't just be downright terrible forever. Right. All right. Any last second questions? We went over the hour. We didn't get done in that 7 minutes. Everybody had questions when I put that time limit on there. Made sure we went over, but we are going to make it quick. I didn't beg anybody. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. I ain't going to beg anybody to watch. He said, please don't beg for subs. It makes you look like shitheads. I've never begged anybody for a sub. You're here for a reason or you're not. So either go or don't. I'm going to be just fine. Don't be a douche in the chat. Makes you look like a shithead. Okay, well, if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. I'm not begging you to stay. Anyways, that was a point for you to chime in and before I say too much.
Oh, well, people are people. I mean, you can't let them get
Oh
to you.
no, not getting to me. It's
Obviously,
just, I mean, I I think it's worse to be a douche than it is to just say if you like what you're watching, to hit the subscribe button.
seems fairly solid. When I'm on YouTube, if I see a video, I like it, I will subscribe to the channel just to see what else they got. It is what it is. I mean, we put it on YouTube. Obviously, part of it is we want people to subscribe and like our stuff. We didn't want that, we wouldn't put it on YouTube.
Anyways, why don't you give the sales pitch so we can be shitheads again? Because we are at the time that we are ending the stream for this week. We will be back next week, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday, and I will be live this Sunday from 10 a.m. to noon before lock Eastern time, with start sits, talking some matchups, who's in a good matchup, and injury reports when they come out. We talk about who's the benefit and who is hurt by those different injuries that come out. So we'll do that Sunday morning. But what else you got for us, Brad?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys like the content that we're giving you, all this wonderful free content, go to rotoheat.com. That's the hub of everything. We post articles on a weekly basis regularly. We're trying to get daily stuff up, whether it's start sits, buy low, waiver pickups, individual players, defensive players. RotoHeat.com is the hub for it. You can find links to our Discord channel where we keep the conversation going, our Facebook page where we have I think we're getting close to the 2,000 people mark on that page. We've got a lot of places to interact with us, and we'd love for you guys to join the conversation. So find us on rotoheat.com. If you're interested in getting into the fantasy football writing world, we're always looking for more writers. We love to get guys in. We've had guys come through our world and go to things like Sports Illustrated. We've had them work into other positions and with other groups. So whatever we can do to help you guys in your fantasy football walk, we like to do that. That's what we're here to do. So we're here to help you win. Don't forget to go over to Twitter. You see our Twitter handles on here. At RotoHeat Fantasy is the main Twitter handle. We've been pumping out news through there as we see it come through, especially in weeks like this where it's busy. We were pumping through a lot of information throughout the week. And we hope you guys enjoyed it, and
Yeah,
we will
I
see
do
you
want
again
to
next
say
week.
too. I've thought about doing some second half of the season leagues, maybe starting up next week. So if that is something that you'd be interested in, right now I run 12 leagues with about 300 players in them. 396 team leagues, as I mentioned before. But thinking about running some second half season leagues. If the first half didn't go well for you, we may do some here in the next week. Hit me up on Twitter, in the Facebook group, whatever, um, and let me know. You can email me at rick@rotoheat.com. And Jake had a cake. We're all good, man. We're all good. But that is going to be it for tonight. I'm going to turn on this World Series Game 7 and call it a wrap. Don't forget, make sure you hit the subscribe button and notification bell so you don't miss any more fantasy football content from the rotoheat.com team. Also, right there, playlist. Hit it. Watch the videos. Do it. You want to. Do it.